Hello, this is Mrs. McGauley, and today we're going to be looking at a poem by William Carlos Williams entitled This Is Just to Say. And we're going to use the TP-CASTT poetry analysis form to help us figure out what the speaker is trying to convey to his audience, what his message might be, and how he goes about portraying that message through the use of different figurative language devices. We're going to start by looking at the title, This Is Just to Say. And when we look at the title, we're going to consider what he might be talking about. We're going to try to make a prediction. You don't want to spend a lot of time on this particular section of the analysis. So when I look at the title, I'm going to think, what is this? Is it a note? I'm probably going to predict that the speaker is going to leave a note for his friend telling him to have a good day. So after I've looked at the title, I'm going to go back and now I'm going to read the entire poem. This Is Just to Say by William Carlos Williams. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. After I've done that, I'm going to go to the P in the TP-CASTT analysis form. P stands for paraphrase. And what you're going to do is you're going to go through the poem stanza by stanza and put it in your own words. I've put the original text of the poem on one side so you can see how I came about with my own paraphrase. So looking at the first stanza, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox. I look at that to mean I ate the plums that were in the refrigerator, because a lot of times icebox and refrigerator mean the exact same thing. Then I'm going to look at the second stanza, and which you were probably saving for breakfast. So I'm going to think that means I know you wanted to eat them for breakfast. And then the last stanza, forgive me, they were delicious, so sweet and so cold. I'm going to translate that in my own words to mean, I'm sorry, but I couldn't help myself. They were too tempting. After the paraphrase, I'm going to look at connotation. I'm going to look for words that have an emotion attached to them. Also be looking for any figurative language devices, patterns of sound, rhythm, or rhyme. Finally, I'm going to think about the effect that these things that I've discovered have on the meaning of the poem. So I'm going to look at the word just in the title. This is just to say. And when you say just, it's a word used to indicate that something's really not that important. It's just an afterthought, a side note, almost like you're saying, by the way. Then I'm going to look at that phrase, forgive me. It indicates the speaker knows he is wrong for eating the plums. You don't ask for forgiveness unless you know you've done something wrong. Then the next thing I'm going to look at are those two words as adjectives, sweet and cold. They emphasize the temptation that the speaker feels when he looks at the plums in the refrigerator. Perhaps the plum owner is the sweet one, and he feels like he's cold for eating the plums that were there, left by the plum owner for breakfast. He's being very selfish when he eats those plums. Then I'm going to look at the adverb so that he uses to describe sweet and cold. So indicates the irresistible nature of the plums. It's not the speaker's fault. We need to blame the plums. It's their fault because they were so sweet and so cold. The rhythm is more like normal speech patterns. The author wants to convey that this is a typical communication between friends. It sounds very much like what you would just normally say to a friend in talking. And then I'm going to look at the length of the lines. There is no rhyme scheme, so the length of the lines can be really important. The short lines help indicate that the speaker's thinking as he goes. This note was not planned ahead of time, much like the action of eating the plums is spontaneous. Then I get to the A in the TP-CASTT analysis. A stands for attitude. Attitude and tone are the same thing when we're looking at poetry. So we're going to think, what is the speaker's attitude toward the subject? How does he or she feel? What clues did you use from the text to get to that conclusion? I think in looking at this poem that the speaker is very inconsiderate. That's the attitude of the poem. I know that because he uses the word just to indicate that the speaker feels little guilt about eating the plums. Then I'm going to think, well, he said the word probably saving, so the speaker admits knowing that the plum owner had the intention of eating these plums for breakfast, and he ate them anyway. Next, that phrase, forgive me, that we looked at before, that conveys remorse, but the rest of the poem doesn't support a contrite attitude. Contrite meaning feeling sorry for something that you've done. And then lastly, by describing the plums as so sweet and so cold, the speaker is showing that he feels that it isn't his fault. Now you'll notice a lot of these examples were the same ones we saw when we looked at the connotation. And connotation really has a lot to do with how we see the attitude or the tone of the poem. So these two steps really go together very well. The next step, the S in TP-CASTT, is for shift. Where does the speaker shift to another emotion or a topic? Look for a change in rhythm, rhyme, or tone. Punctuation and or stanza divisions are usually where the shift's going to occur. What is the effect of the shift? Now in this poem, the shift occurs when the speaker says, "Forgive me." This is the only evidence of the speaker admitting that he did something wrong. However, he ends the poem with the justification of his action, which takes us back to our attitude that we discovered, which is inconsiderate. Next we have theme, or themes. First we're going to decide what the subject of the poem is, and then after you've figured out the subject, you're going to ask yourself, what is the speaker trying to say about that subject? And then you need to express your theme in a complete sentence, and not just a single word. The single word's the subject, the complete sentence would be your theme. So the subjects of this poem are friendship, desire, and temptation. I look at those subjects and I'm saying, what does the speaker try to say about those things? I think one possible theme of the poem is that given the right temptation, a person will put his own needs and wants above someone else's. Now this is only one possible theme. When you're looking at a poem, a lot of times there are many themes that you could justify through the use of the text. The last T stands for title. We're going to go right back to where we started at the beginning, but this time we're going to revisit the title and think about it a little bit longer than we did the first time. Why is this title appropriate for this poem? Why do you think the author chose this title? The title is appropriate because the speaker doesn't feel that eating the plums was an unforgivable wrong. After all, they were just plums. The author wants to reinforce the theme of the poem through the title. Now to end our discussion, I'm going to show you a dramatization of this poem so you could see the inconsiderate nature of the speaker.
Every night on the radio, 9 minutes past 8 good morning breakfast, 10 o'clock until Wire will be taking over the airwaves.
I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious. So sweet. And so cold.